Thank you for joining us tonight. You're now with me, Shel Shaminato, for TVS Nightline. We begin with the headlines. A total of 31,500 second batch of Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines had safely arrived in Kuching International Airport, or KIA, under the Sarawak Immunization Program. Meanwhile, Khairil Zarif has the report.
Sekarang ini saya berada di warehouse Raya Air, kawasan kargo lapangan terbang Kuching, di mana kita menyaksikan sendiri ketibaan vaksin fasa pertama iaitu penghantaran kedua di sini, iaitu sebanyak 31,500 dos vaksin yang telah kita terima di sini, dan vaksin ini adalah vaksin Pfizer-BioNTech, dan kita telah di sini kita diterima oleh ahli JPBN Sarawak iaitu Datuk Seri Dr. CMCO, dan kerjasama penghantaran ini adalah dengan pesawat penerbangan pesawat Raya Airways Boeing B767 siri 232F, dan pesawat ini berlepas pada pukul 3.30 petang tadi dan mendarat pada pukul 5.20 petang, dan beberapa hari lagi suntikan ini akan diberi kepada di luar kawasan Kuching, iaitu daerah-daerah lain yang belum menerima vaksin ini seperti Sibu, Bintulu dan sebagainya. Itu saja laporan daripada saya, Khairil Afindi, dan juru kamera Awang Azmel melaporkan untuk TVS. Minister of Local Government and Housing cum Advisor to the Sarawak State Disaster Management Committee (STMC), Datuk Seri Dr. CMCO said this vaccine will be distributed to districts that had not yet received the vaccines during the first phase.
Kali kedua ini ada 31,500 doses. Minggu dulu ini have 23,400. So pada hari ini, selepas ini ada yang di Kuching, ada yang akan pergi ke division belum ada. Itu division belum ada ialah di Bintulu, Miri dan Limbang. So besok yang tidak split ada pergi ke sana.
For the record, when the vaccines arrived in Sarawak on February 24, 2021, a total of 8,323 vaccine recipients had been vaccinated for the past 3 days in 9 districts throughout Sarawak. In addition, a total of 9,700 frontliners in Sarawak had received the jab.
Following the next update, as Sarawak recorded the most number of vaccine recipients since the COVID-19 vaccination program was launched on February 26th. A total of over 10,000 frontliners in Sarawak had received the jab.
Sehingga 2 Mac 2021, jumlah yang diberi suntikan vaksin adalah sebanyak 10,801. Bermula imunisasi mulai Mac 26. Maka kita dapat according to our jadual.
Meanwhile, Assistant Minister of Housing and Public Health, Dr. Anwar Rapai, was of the opinion that there were several factors that had caused some states to record low numbers of vaccine recipients. He noted that the Sarawak government was purchasing her own vaccines to meet the number of population statewide.
Mayor, there are 2 reasons for this. Number one, we have to know why other states are not doing as much as we have now. It could be they refuse to be vaccinated. Okay, the frontliner, this is the frontliner. And number 2 could be their logistic. But if they say it's logistic, it does not make sense to me. Sarawak is even worse in terms of logistic compared to Penang. Yeah. But that's why we are worried now. Whether because of the acceptance of the vaccine among the frontliner is very low. That's why the rest of still wait and see type of attitude, you know.
Meanwhile, the Conditional Movement Control Order, or CMCO, enforced in Sarawak since January 18 contributed to lower crime rates for the past 2 months. Sarawak Police Commissioner Dato' Aidi Ismail said since January 1 until February 28, the crime rate significantly dropped to 60% compared to the same period last year.
He said the period between January until February last year recorded 1,766 criminal cases. However, this year recorded 732 cases during the period. From the overall figure, he said violent crimes dropped by 50%, which was 96 cases compared to 200 cases last year, while property-related crime reduced by 60%, which was 627 cases compared to 1,966 cases last year.
Ada kaitan dari segi di mana orang ramai oleh kerana kita masih dalam PKPB sekarang ni melibatkan orang ramai tidak dibenarkan menetap daerah ataupun menetap zon dan juga kawalan pergerakan ni mungkin memberi sedikit kesan kepada dia lah kadang-kadang jenayah, especially jenayah yang melibatkan harta benda lah.
Commenting further, ID said crime rate in Kuching decreased to 63%, which was 176 cases compared to 477 cases last year. Miri with 115 cases compared to 327 last year, and Padawan with 110 cases compared to 243 last year.
Minister of Youth and Sports of Sarawak, Dato' Abdul Karim Rahman Hamzah, urged the federal government to strengthen border security of Sarawak. This was to control illicit drugs crossing in the state.
He said most of the cases related to illicit drugs were transported through courier services. Inspection of the goods was not easy because the packages could not be opened anywhere.
That is why I have always raised it up. Dalam mesyuarat di peringkat nasional pemadam, I've told them, we need to beef up the dog unit. Sarawak, personally, I see whether it is under K9 police ataupun custom, we have got less than 10 dogs, if I'm not mistaken, less than 10 dogs. We have got so many entry points, the airport Kuching, airport Bintulu, airport Miri, airport Sibu. We have got all the border, we have got all the port, parcel office.
In addition, the state government was ready to provide tracking dogs, but another agency was needed to train the animals. He also understood that this purpose would incur high costs. However, this was to prevent illicit drug smuggling between ports of entry and border barriers.
Meanwhile, Karim suggested that a Cure and Care Rehabilitation Centre, or CCRC, for Sarawakian women involved in drug abuse should be established.
This was because women involved in drug abuses statewide were normally sent to the rehabilitation center located in Bachok, Kelantan. If they had to go to the current rehabilitation center located at 6 Mile in Kuching, they had to be placed at the same premises with men even though they stayed at another block. Karim said this should not be because it involved the safety of the women inmates.
Personally, I see they should not even be in the same.
At least one more.
Yeah, there must be a wanita punya CCRC, lelaki punya. CCRC ni tempat kalau ibu bapa melihat anak mereka terlibat dengan dada, they send them over. Sendiri, you know, or voluntary. Tapi the one that is ordered by the court, kalau sesiapa yang terlibat dengan dadah, wanita ke lelaki. Kalau lelaki, adalah kita ada tempat di sini. Untuk wanita, kalau mahkamah kata dia perlu dihantar ke pusat pemulihan, we don't have a pusat pemulihan untuk wanita.
In the same developments, fines and compounds will be imposed upon any individual found to be cutting queue to get the COVID-19 vaccine jab under the National Immunization Program, with a fine not exceeding 500,000 ringgit or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 6 months or both.
The penalty was among 5 new provisions under the Emergency Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Amendment Ordinance 2021. According to Health Minister Dato' Sri Dr. Adam Baba, the ministry can use Section 31, which provides authority for the implementation of penalties according to Act 342 for any violation not included in the Act. He explained that the rules under this new subsection could stipulate any action that violated the rules under Act 342. Moreover, the ministry had Section 21A that gives authority to the Directors of Health to impose the penalty.
Individuals tested positive for COVID-19, persons under investigation or close contacts to patients, and persons under surveillance will be equipped with a tracking device effective March 11.
According to Health Minister Datuk Sri Dr. Adam Baba, the order to wear a tracking device was among the 5 new provisions under the Emergency Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Amendment Ordinance 2021. He said the high-tech device was in the form of a wristband aimed at controlling movement and was to be worn for 10 days. It is mandatory for 3 categories, namely individuals who had tested positive for COVID-19, persons under investigation (PUI) or close contacts of COVID-19 patients, and persons under surveillance (PUS). Penalties would be imposed if the tracking device was destroyed, damaged, lost, or altered. However, patients receiving treatment at hospital or those who are undergoing quarantine at quarantine centers will not have to wear the tracking device. However, patients receiving treatment at hospitals or those who are undergoing quarantine at quarantine centers will not have to wear the tracking device. Instead, they will only wear a regular COVID-19 wristband, since monitoring at both premises would be much more easier. Dr. Adam stressed that the government was concerned and committed in the effort to combat the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hello there everyone and welcome back. Now on to the next update, as inter-zone travel is still not allowed in Sarawak. Movement between zones will still need permission from the police.
Apa yang sebenarnya adalah pergerakan antara zon dalam negeri Sarawak masih tidak dibenarkan mengikut SOP yang telah dilulus pada 2 bulan dan kuat kuasa sehingga 15 Mac. Maka pergerakan di antara zon di negeri Sarawak memerlukan kebenaran dari PDRM.
Meanwhile, Sarawak recorded 210 recovered cases and discharged from hospitals. However, the state also recorded 139 new cases of the virus infection. Cebu recorded the highest cases at 39, followed by Kuching 29 and Bintulu 17. At the same time, foreign workers will be allowed back into Sarawak from March 1. However, it will be under stringent standard operating procedures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. State Disaster Management Committee Chairman Dato' Ahmad Douglas Ugah Ambas said the reopening of the state to foreign workers was decided during a meeting chaired by Chief Minister Dato' Patinggi Abang Johari Tun Openg. The State Localization Committee had approved a total of 27,000 applications for foreign workers. It covered sectors like agriculture, plantation, construction, manufacturing and services.
Pekerja asing yang nak masuk, dia mesti dapat saringan di negara mereka 3 hari belum lepas ke Sarawak. Apabila datang di Sarawak, the employer are responsible to pick them up from the point of entry and then bring them to a place of quarantine. Place of quarantine can be, kalau plantation can be at the plantation, kalau factory can be a factory, kalau construction site can be at construction site. But the place of quarantine must be approved by Jabatan Kesihatan Negeri Sarawak.
However, Ugah said employers who do not have a quarantine centre can put their workers at designated hotels for 14 days. The first delivery of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to Malaysia was expected to arrive in the second quarter of this year. President of AstraZeneca Malaysia, Dr. Sanjeev Panchal, said the company would continue to fulfill their commitment to provide broad and equitable access at no profit.
The company is working closely with the Malaysian government to help stamp the pandemic, thus enabling people to return to normalcy and pave way for the country's economic recovery. Dr. Sanjeev said the approval marks another important milestone following a landmark agreement with the Malaysian government and aims to supply 6.4 million doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine to millions of Malaysians. He said the approval decisions was anchored on rolling submissions, which included results of an interim analysis of the third phase program conducted by the University of Oxford. He added the Malaysia authorization is for the 2 standard dose regimen of vaccine, which was shown in the clinical trials to be well tolerated and effective at preventing symptomatic COVID-19, with no severe cases and no hospitalizations of more than 14 days after the second dose. He added the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine has been granted authorizations for use in many countries in the European Union and the world. The vaccine has been granted conditional registration approval in Malaysia by the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency and PRA for active immunizations of individuals 18 years and above for the prevention of COVID-19.
Following the next news, as the government of Saudi Arabia has urged all Muslims wanting to perform the Hajj pilgrimage to get vaccinated for COVID-19 beforehand.
Health authorities in Saudi Arabia have said the pilgrims will first need to provide proof that they've been vaccinated against COVID-19. Saudi Arabia's health ministry confirmed the decision in a statement on Tuesday, saying that vaccination would be the main condition for participation. The ministry did not specify whether this year's Hajj, which is due to begin on the evening of July 17th, would exclude pilgrims from outside the kingdom in order to prevent the spread of COVID. Last year's Hajj pilgrimage were limited to just 1,000 pilgrims who lived in Saudi Arabia.
Meanwhile, Lembaga Tabung Haji's financial position remains stable. Tabung Haji announced of 3.10% after zakat for year 2020. Distribution involves a total amount of 2.24 billion ringgit for 2020 compared to 2.14 billion ringgit in 2019.
The total assets exceeds the total liabilities by 3.68 billion ringgit for the financial year ended December 31st, 2020, or known as FY20. The Pilgrims Fund Board said total assets stood at 81.85 billion ringgit and total liabilities were 78.17 billion ringgit. Group Managing Director and CEO Datuk Nik Muhammad Hashuddin Yusof said they aim to provide a stable profit distribution to depositors. This is in line with its mandate to manage the funds of Muslims planning to fulfill the Hajj obligation. Hashuddin said they expect a more challenging operating environment where investors will be pressured to look for higher returns amid a soft economy.
A good news as Malaysia continues to be the largest Islamic banking, sukuk and takaful market in ASEAN. The nation's Islamic banking sector continued to expand amid economic challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Fitch Ratings said Islamic financing contributed nearly all of the banking sector's growth in 2020. The credit rating agency said the share of Islamic financing reached 37% by the end of 2020, compared with 35% at end 2019. In 2021, Fitch expects the Islamic banking sector's credit profile to remain stable, with adequate loss absorption buffers. In the medium term, it said the penetration of Islamic finance would likely rise. The gross domestic product growth forecast at 6.7% this year.
Thank you for staying with me. Now, Minister of Welfare, Community Wellbeing, Women, Family and Childhood Development, Datuk Seri Fatimah Abdullah, witnessed the appointment of the new Women and Family Department Sarawak Director Norita Bawi, who took up the post effective on Wednesday. Norita replaced Noria Ahmad, who reported for duty as the new Sarawak Social Welfare Department Director effective March 1. Norita Bawi was previously the former Sarawak Islamic Religious Department Deputy Director. Meanwhile, Fatima said her ministry was still offering the Kenyalang Gold Card for senior citizens, which offers discounts or rebates for goods and services as well as assistance amounting to 3,000 ringgit to families of departed members, which is given to cardholders next of kin to help reduce the family's burden for burial expenses. There is also Bantuan Khas Pesakit Buah Pinggang or BKPPP, an aid for kidney failure patients from the B40 and M40 groups for treatment and support, said Fatima. Right, now the construction of a flyover at 4th Mile has caused some congestion for road users. Thus, the flyover will be opened partially to ease the traffic in the area.
According to Chi Yen Fong, project manager of JKR Sarawak, the bridge will be attempted to open by this week. However, the partial opening will only serve as a diversion and not fully open for the public. The opening will involve one lane of the bridge carriageway, while the other will remain closed for construction.
Yes. So we cannot open totally, but JKR has arranged to open one lane to ease the traffic.
Actually, the seat road still open one. The downside, the bridge one, we open the one lane first.
Yeah.
And then it's from Kuching, from the Syrian to the Kuching side.
Senior Assistant Commissioner Lucas Akit is the new Chief of Sarawak Criminal Department, or CID. Sarawak Police Commissioner Dato' ID Ismail said he was confident that Lucas would carry out his duties effectively. ID said Lucas has an extensive experience in policing works. He called upon the whole Sarawak police contingent to give their full support and cooperation to Lucas. Lucas was the former head of the Sarawak Narcotics Crime Investigation Department (NCID) in 2016. He who was the former Bukit Aman Narcotics Criminal Investigation Department Intelligence and International Relations Principal Assistant Director took over from Sarawak Acting CID Chief ACP Zulkifar Muhammad Ghazali. From Lundur to Subis and from Muka to Baram, 102 rural communities in these areas are now enjoying satellite broadband services. The Sarawak Multimedia Authority, SMA, in the statement announced the 50% milestone completion rate for the Wi-Fi saluran interim connectivity solutions. The project began in early February this year, 2021. The WS project is about installing very small aperture terminal or VSAT. It then targeted remote rural areas as interim solutions to the first 300 telecommunication tower projects. SMA added users who have Sarawak ID will get a free 1 gig internet access per month for the WS services. The full deployment of 200 VSAT terminals, which will cover all districts in Sarawak, was expected to be completed by the end of March 2021. Wrapping up the Nightline tonight, as Malaysia to implement pilot project for sustainable vehicle disposal called the Authorised Automotive Treatment Facility, or AATF. The Department of Environment DOE said the components will be segregated for reuse, recycle or reacquisition and final disposal.
Its Director General Nolin Jafar said the AATF would carry out the dismantling of components. The components containing scheduled waste from vehicles which registration had been revoked by the Ministry of Transport. According to the Road Transport Department, there are about 60,000 vehicles that are abandoned nationwide. Nolin said abandoned vehicles contained scheduled waste which needs to be well managed to ensure environmental sustainability. She said AATF was licensed by the DOE under Section 18 of the Environment Quality Act 1974. She added that they had identified 8 companies to take part in the pilot project.
And that concludes TVS Nightline for tonight. And as always, thank you for tuning in to your local news tonight. Here with me, Shel Shamato, and I'll see you next time. Have a good night.